for terrorists of all walks of life to be able to make the assessment, I can do it too. I'm saddened, I'm disappointed, and I'm outraged. And I would ask you to check your patriotism and to find out why you had to do something of that level. With that in mind, I do respect your constitutional rights. I respect them because I respect this nation. And I also respect the rights and responsibilities of this Congress and this committee. And so, sadly, I will ask the question that both of you can answer. You had a duty to inform the Secret Service officer that you were not an officially invited guest. You dressed the part with the intent of attending a state's dinner. You did not receive an official invite. Your backgrounds were not checked by the Secret Service. Your names did not appear on the guest list, and your request for an invitation from Michelle Jones was denied and rebuffed. Can you tell me what more did you need in order to understand that you were not invited?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully reserve my right to remain silent and decline to answer your question.
When you were advised at the gate that your name was not on the list, why did you continue to attempt to enter when you knew you did not have final confirmation?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully assert my right to remain silent and decline to answer your question.
Frederick Bourdin es un impostor francés mejor conocido como el camaleón y afirma que durante su vida ha asumido más de 500 identidades diferentes. Nació en 1974 y desde muy joven escapó de su casa. Aún en la adolescencia empezó a inventarse identidades falsas, sobre todo afirmaba ser huérfano. Eso no era verdad. Lo hacía porque, según sus propias palabras, quería llamar la atención. Y es que Frederick había crecido en una casa con un padre ausente y una madre que no le hacía mucho caso. Las primeras identidades falsas de Frederick eran...
There are 16,800 magazines in this country. But only one calls itself the In-Flight magazine of Air Force One. And that's the thrill of working at the New Republic. This kid, he hacked his way into a company called Juked Micronics and posted the salary of every Juked employee on Juke's website, saying the big bad bionic boy has been here, baby. I want a Miata. I want a trip to Disney World.
It's funny.
Why didn't you get this?
I don't know. Do you have phone numbers for all your sources on the hack heaven piece? If somebody wants to do some kind of follow-up story.
Called all the hackers I know, asking if any had heard of a hacker by the name of Big Bad Bionic Boy. Nothing.
He's made some pretty serious charges.
This looks very suspicious to me.
I'm increasingly beginning to believe that I've been duped.
The New Republic's snobbiest rag in the business and gets completely snowed.
Have you thought about the impact this might have?
If you fire him, people will leave.
I go, Chuck, why didn't you back me up? He goes, I'm sorry, Steve. I gotta protect the magazine.
There are political considerations.
The Young Conservatives piece, was that true?
This wasn't an isolated incident. He handed us fiction after fiction, and we printed them all as fact.
What you're telling me is impossible.
If he were a stranger to you, you'd dig and you'd bury him.
But there is one thing in the story that checks out. What's that? There does appear to be a state in the Union named Nevada.
Hayden Christensen.
You're my editor. You're supposed to support me.
Peter Sarsgaard.
When this thing blows, there isn't gonna be a magazine anymore.
I didn't do anything wrong. You saw my notes. Everything was in there.
They're gonna have all this too.
I didn't do anything wrong.
I really wish you'd stop saying that.
Shattered glass.
I just want you to tell me the truth.
18-year-old David Hampton's ruse started innocently enough. In 1983, he was trying to get into a New York nightclub, so he posed as David Poitier, the son of legendary Sidney Poitier. The bouncers believed him and he was allowed into the nightclub. Hampton then somehow got a hold of an address book full of New York's elite families from a young man named Robert Stammer. Using the address book, Hampton would go to the family's home, tell them he was a friend of the family's son or daughter, and that he was Poitier's son. He would tell them he just needed a place to stay for the night, and then tomorrow his dad would be flying into the city. A number of prominent New York families believed him. They took him in for the night, fed him, and gave him small amounts of money. His scam was exposed while he was staying with the editor for Newsweek, Osborne Elliott. His wife, Inga, found Hampton in bed with a man, and Osborne kicked Hampton out. After catching him, Ingrid phoned her friend to relay the story, and her friend said that David Poitier had also stayed with her. Realizing that something wasn't quite right with David Poitier's story, Inga phoned the police. Hampton was arrested on October the 18th, 1983 for attempted burglary and given 21 months in.
Moon hoax refers to a series of 6 articles that were published in the Sun and New York newspaper, beginning on August 25, 1835, about the supposed discovery of life and even civilization on the moon. The discoveries were falsely attributed to Sir John Herschel, one of the best-known astronomers of his time. The story was advertised on August 21, 1835, as an upcoming feature allegedly reprinted from the Edinburgh Courant.
La jugada maestra de Carlo Ponzi. De la vida de Carlo Ponzi no hay mucho de qué hablar. Nació en Ravenna, Italia, en 1882 y que murió en 1949 en Río de Janeiro, Brasil, en un hospital de la caridad, huyendo de la justicia. Se sabe que Ponzi se fue a vivir a Estados Unidos en 1903. Una de las versiones dice que él mismo se fue para buscar un futuro mejor y otras versiones dicen que sus padres lo enviaron porque ya querían deshacerse de él. Estuvo en prisión en Canadá por falsificar las credenciales de una anciana y hacer un retiro en el banco que él mismo trabajaba, y luego estuvo condenado nuevamente en Boston por un negocio de contrabando de inmigrantes italianos. En otras palabras, era un coyote de principios del siglo XX. Partiendo su golpe maestro, nos encontramos con una táctica nueva para esas fechas, el esquema piramidal, aunque...
Cuando Victor Lustig, el rey de los estafadores, fue capturado en 1935, tras décadas de engaños sorprendentes, el gobierno estadounidense se quitó un enorme peso de encima. Acabó con sus huesos en la legendaria prisión de Alcatraz tras un intento frustrado de falsificar más de $130 millones, operación que, de haberse llevado a cabo, habría sacudido los cimientos de la economía de ese país.
She was wandering the countryside.
Caribou.
You, Caribou? She had no name.
Who is it? Oh, that is a filthy beggar.
Stop it! Look at that!
No money.
She's not a beggar, dear. She's a stranger in need.
No home.
Her story should be told.
And no one could understand her.
But I...
Hers is a language I have never before encountered.
So they did the logical thing.
Our home has become your home, my dear.
They made her royalty.
May I present Princess Caribou? She is the sensation of the town.
Now everyone is wondering.
I think she comes from a tribe of woman warriors.
Is she living a fairy tale?
Princess?
Or making one up?
Have you examined the markings on her buttock?
As she goes along.
Do you think she's a fraud?
Yes.
Phoebe Cates. Stephen Ray.
It's a mad, dangerous thing you're doing.
Kevin Kline.
They are idiots.
John Lithgow.
She's an imposter.
The incredible true story of Princess Caribou.
I know you are a fraud, and I spit in your soup.
Tony Curtis is the great imposter, the true story of the world's greatest hoaxer.
All right, boys. You can come out now.
Either he's the bravest man I ever saw, or the biggest dang fool ever lived.
Ben, stay out of this, R.C. Careful, Ben. Careful.
One day, he's putting down a riot in the guise of a prison warden. And the next day, he's on the deck of a battleship, impersonating the ship's surgeon, always managing to stay one step ahead of the authorities, while adapting his remarkable skills to whatever his latest hoax demands.
Help me, dear God. I don't want to kill anybody.
I'll bet you right now the Doc Weasley never set foot in the Cayuga.
He said, may God guide your hand.
Tell him I just made the same prayer. You're not allowed to molest enlisted personnel, but with you I'll make an exception.
Are you Martin Goddard?
Yes, I am.
And your real name is Ferdinand Waldo Demara Jr., alias Dr. Monet, alias Brother Joseph Jerome?
War may be over, Mr. Demara. The Army has some unfinished business with you. And the Marines.
I can really
The true story of Ferdinand Waldo Demara Jr., the man of 1,000 careers, a man who had a compulsive desire to put the world on. And boy, did he ever.
You relax now.
Tony Curtis is the great imposter.
In France. The French prisons were a horrible place. There was a cell where you only had a blanket on the floor. There was a hole in the floor to go to the bathroom. There was no plumbing. There was no electricity. And consequently, when you leave that prison system, it is a true deterrent. What I did 40 years ago is 4,000 times easier to do today than when I did it. I always was an opportunist. That's why I got away with the things I got away with. A lot of kids ran away in the 1960s, but they got into Haight-Ashbury and the hippie scene, the drug scene. Instead, I thought, how do I survive now? I'm 16 years old. I look a little older. I'll use that as an asset. And so first thing I did was to lie about my age, just to get people to treat me as an adult. No matter what it brought me, no matter what wealth or fame it brought me, I would never want to have to experience it again. I cried myself to sleep till I was 19 years old. I spent every birthday, Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day in a hotel room by myself. The only people I associated with were people who believed me to be their peer, 10 years older than I actually was. And then, of course, it took the FBI about 3 years to realize that I was a kid and not an adult. And when they identified who I was, I think it was very hard for my mother to comprehend that I was doing all these things because she only knew me as this 16-year-old boy in high school. I actually was on Johnny Carson 9 times back in the late 1970s. And after the first night I was on, he got hundreds of calls about how do I buy this book about this guy? And there was no book. And so Johnny Carson contacted me and said, you need to write a book about your life. I said, no, I'm just in my late 20s. He said, no, now's the time to write it. And we wrote Catch Me If You Can. Steven Spielberg understood that. He knew how this all started. And so on the night that they finished filming the movie and it was completely edited, he made a disc, and the first person ever to actually see the entire film besides Spielberg himself was Johnny Carson. He sent it to his home and wrote on the disc, this would not have been possible without you. I could sit here and tell you that I was a born-again Christian. I'm not. I could tell you that prison rehabilitated me, but it didn't. I could tell you and take a cheap shot that I was a kid and I made some mistakes and grew up. But the truth is, God gave me a wife. She gave me 3 beautiful children. She gave me a family, and she changed my life.